Hey everyone, Mike here today with some thoughts here on Valkyria Chronicles 4 Complete Edition. Now I just finished the game. It's a fairly long game, it's got a lot of story, and since I don't want to spoil anything, we'll go ahead and load up a skirmish here to show off some of the gameplay and whatnot. Now I've not done any of these, so we'll see how it goes, doing one of these for the first time, but anyway, it should be pretty straightforward. So, what's the game all about? What is there to say about it? And what are my overall thoughts? So, gameplay-wise, I think this is a pretty straightforward game. They do a pretty good job making the strategy kind of quick, kind of fun. It's not a very difficult strategy-based game. But the fact that the gameplay is rather quick does make it pretty interesting, right? You're not spending a lot of time on your turns. You do have to think about what you're going to do, but you can also execute your turn very quickly. So that makes this game pretty enjoyable in that sense. And as you'll see, they give you a lot of tools to kind of have the good situational awareness of, who can see you, who can attack you, and who you can see but the enemy can't see you, kind of thing. We'll see some of that here. So when you start the game, generally it starts with your turn, but sometimes it starts with the enemy's turn first. And as you can see here, all of these yellow lines means that basically all of these enemies could technically attack me. Now if the lines are blue, the enemy's not looking in my direction, therefore I can get a bit of an advantage on them if I were to fire first. But beyond that, yeah, you can see that one's red because he's attacking me at the moment. That's about it. So we'll go ahead and use one of these simple attacks. I feel like this battle is going to be over really quickly. I believe this is actually one of the early maps. Yeah, we might have... No, actually, I think this is pretty much the first map. Just, yeah, obviously rebalanced differently because we've got some endgame units and we're facing some early game stuff. And anyways, yeah, we could do some combos as well. If I'm standing here with a certain unit, they can attack together. And so you could take advantage of that kind of stuff. And other than that, there are a couple classes. So you saw me choose different units at the beginning. I was choosing... Generally, you want at least one from each class. The game is also meant to be pretty replayable to try and get like an A grading on missions. And so being able to choose a more optimal unit composition is kind of a mechanic. But again, until you get to the later stages of the game, or you're trying to get A grades right off your first gameplay run, or your first playthrough run, rather. Yeah, you can play it pretty safe for the most part, just have one of each. So yeah, each of the different unit classes, they tend to be pretty different from each other. They all have kind of their own specialty. And so this, for instance, is a scout class, which means I can run pretty far. I've got a rifle that's generally pretty accurate, decent damage output, decent range, but ultimately both the run distance and also the vision distance. Certain missions will get you to go through low visibility situations, and in those particular missions these scouts can exceed because, well, they can see a little bit further. They can see through fog and snow and stuff. Whereas other units will be even more hampered than usual. But yeah, there's a shock trooper up here, which I did use a shock trooper earlier as well. As you can see, shock trooper, very fast shots, very high damage output, but the catch is that their submachine guns have pretty limited range, so they're not going to be attacking you from very far. Sniper, pretty self-explanatory, right? Long distance shots, pretty accurate. There's a mechanic class, which as you walk up to units will refill their ammo. And on top of that, the mechanic class here can also repair vehicles, repair barriers, or disable mines and stuff. There's all sorts of little things that the mechanics are good for, or the engineers, I guess, more specifically. And finally, we've got these anti-tank guys, and then we've got kind of an artillery unit as well. So yeah, mechanically, you've seen when I get into range, these enemies will fire at me. That is part of the mechanics. You know, if they're facing in the correct direction, they will have a response fire. Otherwise, you can just run around behind them, get them from behind. They may not notice you, which is kind of the strategy, I suppose, you can pull off. They can see kind of sideways, though, so you have to be a bit careful about that. So as you can see, this guy did turn around when I moved. But yeah, since this is effectively the first mission, these units are extremely weak. I can take them out very easily. And we're going to finish this in our first turn, which is pretty fun. So we'll capture this, and we're done. I might do a second mission, because we'll talk a tiny bit about the story, not too much. But I will point out a couple other things. Because for the most part, we just went through the basics. And as you can see, like, yeah, strategically, the biggest thing is just making sure you choose kind of the right units for the right time. And execute your turn in kind of a logical order. So, you know, you don't want to send out necessarily scout units right away to engage units that are close, when they can run further in and engage units that are further away. So there's little things like that, which you probably want to think about. Again, the game does ramp up the difficulty nicely, so you have time to learn that stuff in the first mission. As you start learning those mechanics, you know, you can perform better and better. So you'll see there are different ranks for some of these units. Some of them have like that little badge down the left. These are kind of the leaders or aces, as they call them. Each of these will actually give you an extra turn while they're deployed, and so it's in your interest to keep those units deployed and not lose them in battle. So that can be pretty good. Other than that, yeah, we'll just go for the typical one of each. Yeah, they have a ranking in the top right corner, so if you've used them more, they rank up a little bit. Makes them a little bit better. In terms of level, that's part of the story mode, so as you play through the game's matches, you get XP that you can spend to upgrade units. And by units, I mean the entire class. So I could spend units to upgrade the scouts, or maybe the troopers, so on and so forth. And you can also see there are some likes down there. So certain units have certain preferences, perform a little bit better if they're with allies. And so that's an entire other aspect of the game to think about. Each unit can have up to 4 kind of special effects as well. It can range from all sorts of stuff. Some units, if too many enemies are looking at them, they'll panic, they can't move. On the flip side, another unit may take that as a challenge and actually perform better. So there's all sorts of crazy scenarios like that can happen. And again, it's a pretty straightforward mechanic. Oh, this is a foggy map. Cool. I think I could just drive beside this tank. Can I squeeze through? Yep, I'll just squeeze through. These tanks here have a weak spot, a radiator in the back. So we'll take advantage of that. Get a one-hit kill here. We'll end our turn. So as you can see in the bottom right corner, the yellow bar, the amount of action points that I have does decrease over time. And so you do have to be a little bit careful about that. You have a limited amount of use for most of these units. The more you use them per turn, the less action points. So they usually lose a third and then 2/3, and then if you use them for another time, you basically have no action points left. So if you're only looking to get a shot out, then okay. But if you're looking to do any more than that, it can be pretty difficult to move units around a lot. So what I'm doing here, I'm just taking out the barriers, taking out their kind of defense bonus. So when my actual units will deal with them, it should be pretty easy. Okay. Oh, I just gotta capture the enemy base. Oh, it's down here. Right. It's like, man, that's gonna be an easy one. So this is a situation where the shock trooper makes the most sense. We'll just run up to these guys. Shock troopers have a little bit of extra resistance if they saw me coming. Oh no, are you serious? So there's a penalty that, yeah, random status effects that certain units get, which it's a little annoying, but it is what it is. It's all about managing kind of the risk benefits of some of these units as well. And so you do have several options when it comes to that. But anyways, story-wise, like I said, this is very much a story-based game, so I don't want to get into any specifics, mostly because I don't want to spoil it. It's probably going to spend 30 or so hours on this game. It's a pretty long game. If you want to get into this one, you can play the first Valkyria Chronicles. It's also available on PC. Both games can be played independently from each other, though there are a couple little hints and references here and there to the first game here, but not really. Mechanically, both the first and the fourth game are very similar as well. The reason I'm not talking about Valkyria Chronicles 2 and 3 is because those are, I think it was a PSP and a Vita game? I believe that's what it was. So, you know, obviously fairly different games because of that. And so, yeah, I think most people often just regard 1 and 4 as kind of the two primary games, if you will. Alright, we can go around as well. We just have to capture the point. So I can take some of the damage. Actually, I can really take that damage. Holy moly. 6 shots is not enough, so I'll just use a grenade. Grenade's almost always a kill. So normally that scout unit would have gone down in 2 shots, but because they're behind cover, right? They get a defense bonus. But yeah, I'm absolutely destroying this because, again, it's early game missions with end game units, so it is what it is. But anyways, yeah, story-wise, it's a fun game. I'd say some parts of the story are predictable, which, not to say it's bad. It is what it is. I still enjoy it. You know, this kind of anime style stuff is not generally my kind of game, but I do like what they did with this. And hey, the anime story does allow them to do some silly stuff as well. And so, yeah, even if it's not necessarily your thing, I think the gameplay is good enough to kind of keep it going. So with that said, expect a 30-hour game. I do see that it retails for $62.99 Canadian or $49.99 US. That is the retail price, of course. However, it has come down 80% off, so $12.60 Canadian or $10 US. And this is the complete edition, so it includes several DLCs, which also add a lot more content. And kind of makes the game slightly easier, mostly because you can go out and get some extra XP instead of just replaying older missions. You can play new ones, and it feels a bit less tedious because of that. But yeah, otherwise, I'm not going to dive into too much of other stuff in this game. Again, I don't want to spoil anything. I am also at the end game. I'm past the end game, so that's why I'm really touchy at not wanting to show too much more, in case you're sensitive to that stuff. So anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, once again, this was Valkyria Chronicles 4 Complete Edition on Steam. And yeah, graphically, pretty much maxed out. I did limit it to 90 frames because I do have a high refresh rate monitor. And yeah, it runs great on PC, so that said, I'll see you guys next week with another video.